After my mother passed away, my father married a new stepmother, who said that only one of my sister and I could stay. My sister was sent to a poor mountainous area, unable to bear the harsh farm work under the sun and wind. She fled the mountains under the cover of night, only to be abducted by human traffickers halfway and taken to another mountain, where she was locked in a dark cellar. Meanwhile, I continued to live as the privileged daughter of a wealthy family, graduating from a prestigious university and eventually becoming engaged to the richest man. My sister, who was later rescued, harbored deep resentment and stabbed me to death at the wedding. Waking up again, my sister is doing everything she can to stay in the wealthy family. I know she has also been reborn. The night before I was sent to the mountains, my sister looked down on me and said, "This time, it's your turn to be the lowly sow." I sneered coldly. What she thought was a paradise of wealth and luxury was actually a more terrifying battlefield than the mountains. I died on the stage at the wedding, with petals filling the sky against the backdrop of splattered blood. A sharp knife was deeply embedded in my heart, and I fell backward to the ground, my pupils gradually dilating. Blood stained the white wedding dress. The joyful and warm wedding of a moment ago had turned into a crime scene filled with screams the next second. Song Lan's laughter was maniacal as she spat at me, songing, "All of this is your fault. If I had been the one who stayed back then, I would be just like you. This wedding of the century should have been mine. Go to hell, you bitch." She still seemed unsatisfied, viciously pulling out the knife and stabbing it repeatedly into other parts of my body. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day 5 years ago when my father decided to send away either me or my sister. On the evening after my mother's funeral, my father called my sister and me over, with Aunt Ching standing beside him, looking particularly kind. Aunt Ching wiped her moist eyes regretfully. "Auntie knows you both must want to stay, but my energy is limited, so I can only keep one of you." Alas, Dad smiled and crouched down. "I bought your favorite ice cream. How about one for each of you?" I stared at the ice cream in Dad's hand. This was his test for us sisters. The one who showed the most filial piety would get to stay, while the other would be sent to our mother's impoverished hometown in the mountains. Enduring unbearable farm work, Song Lan suddenly pushed me aside, picked up the ice cream, and proudly handed it to Dad. "I won't eat it. All the good things are for Dad." She was repeating my answer from my past life, word for word, as expected. A kind smile appeared on Dad's face. Dad patted Song Lan's head and nodded approvingly. Good, good. Lan Lan is truly the most filial daughter." Aunt Ching's eyes flickered with a hint of wariness, but she maintained a smile on her face. "Lan Lan is so clever and quick-witted. Auntie really likes a daughter like you. I'll definitely treat you well in the future." Song Lan didn't catch the hidden meaning in Aunt Ching's words. Instead, she was immersed in the immense joy of finally being able to stay. She raised her chin proudly and looked at me with a challenging gaze. I knew Song Lan had also been reborn. She had used every trick in the book to stay in the wealthy family, but she didn't know that I had been reborn too. Song Lan and I are different. When she was a child, she fell seriously ill and needed a bone marrow transplant. Neither my father nor my mother met the transplant requirements, so I was born the following year, after Song Lan recovered. My father and mother's attitude toward her could be described as doting. From childhood, Song Lan got whatever she wanted. She didn't need to work hard to receive my parents' care, while I had to excel at everything just to earn a meager word of praise, too. In her previous life, when faced with the choice between 2 ice creams, she didn't hesitate to pick one, even threatening me with a look not to choose, insisting that both ice creams be left for her when Mom was still alive. Song Lan was the apple of Dad's eye. Now, with Aunt Ching as our stepmother, we have become less important in Dad's eyes. Song Lan didn't understand this, and she never imagined that something as simple as ice cream would become the reason she was sent to the mountainous area. Song Lan was sent away, and within a few days, she wrote letters complaining about the poor environment there. The mountainous area had no Western restaurants she loved to eat at, no shopping malls she enjoyed strolling through, and what was even more unbearable was that there wasn't even any signal. Song Lan wrote dozens of letters, naively believing that her father had sent her away because he was too busy after marrying Aunt Ching. She thought that once her father was done with his busy schedule, she would be able to return in style and continue living as the high and mighty young lady she once was. Little did she know that every letter she wrote was intercepted by Aunt Ching, torn to pieces, and thrown into the trash. At first, her father did mention Song Lan at home, but as time went on, her name never came up again. Unable to bear it any longer, Song Lan chose one night to leave the village, only to find that after crossing one mountain, there was still another. Thirsty and hungry, Song Lan began to lose heart, thinking she should just go back, after all. Although going back would be tiring, with those poor relatives around, she would at least have a bite to eat. Songlan started heading back, but halfway there, she encountered a human trafficker. Songlan was trafficked to another village, first tied up at the village chief's house, and later she was simply locked in a cellar with iron shackles, subjected to humiliation. Songlan looked down upon those poor relatives from the mountainous areas, who searched for her day and night in the hills. In the process, her 70-year-old second uncle accidentally rolled down the slope and was found cold and lifeless. 5 years later, Songlan was discovered by a journalist who had come to interview, and she was rescued. The journalist sent her back to the city. At that time, train stations and bus stations were flooded with my advertisements. During my university years, I gained tens of thousands of fans after appearing on camera once, and I naturally signed with a talent agency. Within less than a year, I debuted in a low-budget web series, which unexpectedly became a huge hit. I became a star with my own following, and this year, solid evidence of my relationship with the wealthiest person was revealed. I am about to marry into a family even more prominent than the Song family. Songlan's jealousy and rage shattered her reason, and she stabbed me countless times at the wedding scene. Since I've been given a second chance at life, I'll grant her wish. I'm curious to see how a useless person like her can survive in the Song family, where hidden daggers lurk in the shadows. I walked out of the house carrying a suitcase, and my father patted my shoulder with a hint of heartache, and Ching wore a reluctant expression. Ying, don't worry, your dad and I will definitely visit you during the holidays. I know all of this is just a facade put on by Aunt Ching. After all her painstaking efforts, she finally made it to the day my mother passed away, and now she's proudly married into our family by my father. She probably wishes that both Songlan and I would disappear, the farther the better. However, given her somewhat awkward position, she didn't dare to act too boldly right after marrying in, fearing gossip, so she had to first get rid of either me or Songlan, and then focus on dealing with the other. Songlan sneered coldly, life in the mountains isn't that easy. It's your turn to go be a breeding so this time. 3. Father glared at Songlan with displeasure and scolded. Ying is still your sister. I've truly spoiled you rotten. And Chin comforted Dad. Forget it. The child is still young and doesn't understand. Songlan was scolded by her father for the first time, her face filled with defiance. She habitually threw a tantrum like a spoiled young lady and went upstairs without looking back. Dad's face darkened. Aunt Ching continued to console him, seemingly speaking up for Songlan, but in reality, every word she said was adding fuel to the fire. Aunt Ching was no pushover. Even in my past life, I almost suffered a loss at her hands. Unfortunately, Songlan didn't know yet and was still gloating, thinking I would meet the same tragic fate as she did in her previous life. I first took a plane, then transferred to a coach, and finally rode a donkey cart into the mountainous area. By the time I arrived, it was already late, and rural folks generally go to bed early, but my relatives were eagerly waiting at the village entrance to welcome me. These were all relatives from my mother's hometown. Over a dozen simply dressed elders gathered around, looking at me with cheerful smiles. This girl, she's so pretty. Are you hungry? Auntie has some baked cakes here. I've been holding them close to my chest, so they're still warm. Schwanzi. As her cousin, don't you know you should help your sister with her luggage? What's the use of raising you? I might as well have given birth to a piece of braised pork. I stayed at my second granduncle's house, hearing that I was coming. My second granduncle, who was in poor health, had spent several days beforehand repairing the earthen house. I stayed in a pink bedroom, where even the roof beams were tied with pink bows, though it still couldn't be called luxurious. Every corner was filled with the old man's clumsy yet sincere affection. The next day, I followed them to the farmland, where the rice paddies stretched as far as the eye could see. My aunts wore dark-colored clothes and uniform plastic rain boots, bending down again and again to plant the seeds. They wouldn't let me work, insisting I sit on the ridge and watch. I shook my head and said, "Aunt, I'm already an adult. I can't just be an idle person who only eats." My aunts glanced at me in surprise, then showed an appreciative expression. They carefully taught me how to transplant rice seedlings and farm, and I basically learned it all in one morning. At noon, when the sun was at its fiercest, my aunts and I went to rest in a small shed built on the ridge of the field. My aunts joked, "This little shed was built overnight by your eldest uncle and the others, specifically for you to rest in." Yeah, Ying, you must have been living a good life in the city. We absolutely can't let you feel too much of a gap and become unhappy as soon as you arrive, otherwise, how could we elders have the face to call ourselves that? I smiled. Although life in the mountain village was a bit poor, everyone here still had a warm heart that never grew cold. Over the course of 2 months, I gradually mastered the skills of farm work. Not only did I get some exercise, but I also discovered a secret about this small mountain village. One night, After finishing a day of farm work, I was drenched in sweat and felt uncomfortable all over. Just as I was about to rinse off with the cold water from the vat, my cousin Schwanzi mysteriously said he would take me to a good place. He took me to a spring at the foot of the mountain. The water here is warm. Try it if you don't believe me. I touched the clear spring water, and a warm sensation came from my fingertips, making my eyes sparkle with excitement. My cousin Schwanzi thought this small spring was a miracle, but I knew it was no miracle at all. It might actually be a precious hot spring resource hidden in this mountain. The small mountain village was beautiful, with simple and honest villagers. If the hot springs were properly developed, it could potentially become a tourist paradise, a hidden gem for visitors. I knew that opportunities shouldn't be missed, so I hurriedly asked my uncle to take me to the nearest town in his donkey cart. I contacted a geological survey agency, and they sent people to the small mountain village for an on-site investigation. A month later, the test results came out. The mountain where the small village is located indeed has abundant hot spring resources, and not only that, the soil on the mountain is particularly suitable for growing crops. I brought the test results report back to the small village, and my aunts chattered with beaming smiles. Really? So if we dig out the hot springs, we can get people to come and have fun? Schwanzi, you discovered hot springs and didn't say anything earlier. Damn it, I might as well have given birth to a pig instead of you. Cousin Schwanzi stood pitifully in the corner, his thick eyebrows drooping innocently. How was I supposed to know what a hot spring is? More than a dozen family members in my hometown looked at me with full trust, and my uncles said with a smile, "Inging, we farmers are uneducated. We'll do whatever you tell us to do." My aunts nodded in agreement, saying, "Exactly, we fully support you." The eldest among them, my second granduncle, took a puff of his pipe and silently pulled out a crumpled passbook from a hidden drawer compartment. The amount in the passbook was exactly 80,000 yuan, undoubtedly the savings my second granduncle had set aside for his funeral expenses. "Take it and spend it. If it's not enough, your grandpa still has more." The second granduncle grinned, his face, weathered by over 70 years, was covered with wrinkles, yet he looked so kind and amiable. The small mountain village had just over 100 households. With the persuasion of the aunts, the entire village agreed to dig out the hot springs and vigorously develop tourism. Logically, after the summer vacation, I should have returned to university. But I couldn't bear to leave the small mountain village, so I applied for a 1-year leave of absence. I went to the city to go through the process of attracting investment and finally persuaded a business owner to inject the first investment into the small mountain village. The small mountain village had been under development for 3 months, and we finally excavated a large-scale hot spring. I also applied to the relevant authorities to build a signal tower on the mountain, so the backward villagers finally established a connection with the outside world. My cousin Schwanzi was the first in the village to buy a smartphone, and with him leading the way, the young people in the village gradually started to own mobile phones. In my previous life, I entered the entertainment industry and had long understood the principles of hype. I couldn't afford to hire a troll army, but the more than 100 households in the village voluntarily went online to comment and like. Not long after, 2 journalists from social news outlets came to interview us, and the tourism development of the small mountain village began to take shape. The news of the small mountain village's thriving development reached my father's ears, and after more than half a year, he called me for the first time. "Inging, the Mid-Autumn Festival is coming soon. Come home for a visit." I agreed, although it's only been a little over half a year. I'm already curious about whether Songlan, who stayed at home, has started living the life of a wealthy young lady she always dreamed of. For, since the interview aired, public attention on the small mountain village has increased immediately. Then, 2 more companies proactively approached me and decided to invest, one of which is no smaller in scale than my father's company. Perhaps sensing my potential, Dad specially held a banquet to welcome me home. At the banquet, people came and went wearing designer gowns, with even a simple accessory on them worth an entire year's income for a family in a small mountain village. I arrived a bit late, walking into the villa in a plain white shirt and jeans, standing out like an outsider. Dad, dressed in a suit and tie, frowned with disdain when he saw me. "How could you come dressed like this?" Over the past 6 months, my skin has darkened by more than a shade, turning into a healthy wheat color, and my eyes are bright and full of life. I just finished an interview with a TV station. Upon hearing this, my father beamed with pride and explained to those around him, "Sorry, my daughter was late because she just finished an interview. After all, she was recently selected as one of the top 10 model workers in the national mountainous areas." I had no interest in the flattery-filled banquet. After looking around and not seeing Songlan, I walked into the garden to admire the rare flowers my father had carefully cultivated. A series of footsteps sounded nearby. I looked up and happened to meet San Lan's teasing gaze. San Lan was still the same as ever. I don't know if it's because she's overly pursuing the aesthetic of being fair, young, and thin, but after not seeing her for over half a year, she's lost a lot of weight. Her waist is frighteningly thin, as if it could snap with just a little force. San Lan looked at me disdainfully. It's been a year. And you can actually endure that godforsaken place. Look at you, you're practically a country bumpkin, so uncouth. I raised an eyebrow. The construction in the mountain village is quite good now. The villagers of the hot spring in the small mountain village have almost finished digging it out. I've hired a group of professional construction workers to build the resort villa, and they should be able to complete the progress before the end of the year, but it's clear that San Lan doesn't believe it. In her impression, the small mountain village is still a remote and impoverished place without even a signal. She wanted to mock me a few more times, when suddenly a reckless figure crashed hard into San Lan. San Lan's slender arms and legs were almost knocked to the ground by the force, staggering several steps before finally steadying herself. She then saw a young man dressed in bright and luxurious clothes, holding a remote control and arrogantly raising his head. "Get out of the way. You're in the way of my remote-controlled car." I narrowed my eyes, all too familiar with this young man. San Yang is the son of Aunt Qing and my father, kept outside the home until my mother passed away. The reason Aunt Qing has maintained her position so firmly all these years, aside from knowing how to act cute and play the weak, is largely because she gave my father a son. After all, a son holds a different place in a father's heart compared to a daughter. The moment she saw Song Yang, San Lan's face twisted slightly, as if she were on the verge of unleashing her temper as the young lady of the house. However, mindful of Song Yang, who was treasured by her father like a jewel in his palm, she chose to swallow her anger and stand aside. Song Yang, as proud as a little lion, rolled his eyes mischievously, as if deliberately trying to provoke. He maneuvered the remote-controlled car to repeatedly bump into San Lan's high heels. San Lan took a deep breath and lifted her foot, taking another step to the side, but with that step, she accidentally stepped on the remote-controlled car. Instantly, San Yang flew into a rage and hurled the remote control at her. San Lan let out a startled cry, narrowly dodging the remote control. "It's all your fault. My remote control car is dirty." Faced with San Yang, who was 7 or 8 years younger than her and still aggressive, San Lan's temper as the eldest daughter was about to flare up when the servant beside her coughed loudly. "Miss, this is the young master. Don't forget your status." In an instant, San Lan trembled, glaring resentfully at the young Song Yang. She must have suffered at Song Yang's hands before, knowing that if she tried to teach him a lesson, her father would eventually come to settle the score with her. Aunt Qing has been whispering in his ear for so long, and with Song Yang being the only son, the scales in their father's heart have long been heavily tilted. Even San Lan is no longer held in high regard in their father's eyes. San Lan forced a smile, bowing and scraping to please him. "It's my fault, sister. Let me help you clean the toy car." "Okay, no way." San Yang's eyes darted around as he made an outrageous demand. "Kneel down and lick it clean." "How is that possible?" San Lan's emotions surged violently, her eyes revealing crimson blood vessels as she clenched her teeth tightly at the corner of her mouth. The servant stared sinisterly at the pale-faced San Lan. "Miss, are you going to defy the young master's words?" San Lan choked up, her chest heaving with anger as she clenched her fists tightly. I knew all too well what the consequences would be if I defied Song Yang. Kneeling as punishment was the least of it. Once, I was locked in a dark room for 3 days and 3 nights. When I finally came out, I was nearly dead from thirst, hanging on by just a thread. The servant's threat had its effect. San Lan knelt on the uneven cobblestone path in the garden, hesitantly picking up the toy car. Suddenly, a wave of nausea hit her, and she turned her head aside, retching. "Haha, so much fun. Even more fun than a dog." Song Yang clapped his hands, and the servants joined in with laughter, watching San Lan's dignity trampled into the dirt. I raised one eyebrow. It was only then that Song Yang noticed me. He didn't know who I was and thought I was just another servant from somewhere. "You, come here, help me tie my bow tie." Song Yang arrogantly pointed to his own bow tie, while San Lan looked at me with a smug, triumphant expression, a faint smile playing at the corners of her mouth. From the look in her eyes, I could guess that she was practically hoping I would suffer the same humiliation of being bullied by Song Yang. I curved my lips into a smile, took a step forward, and asked, "Are you sure you want me to help you tie your bow tie?" "Enough nonsense," Song Yang said with an impatient look. "If you don't do a good job, believe it or not, I can have a few people beat you up right now. It's not like I haven't done this kind of thing before." My fingers slowly touched the soft fabric of the tie, then suddenly tightened. The tie strangled Song Yang's neck with all its might. In just a few seconds, his face turned red. He grabbed and scratched at my arms, but since I often did farm work, his strength was no match for even a village dog. He couldn't resist me at all. Just as Song Yang was about to be choked to death, I let go. "Madman, you," cough, 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 madman. Song Yang's eyes bulged. His face twisted in a grimace as he pointed at me. What are you standing there for? Tie her up for me. Song Lan, standing nearby, was completely stunned, seemingly never expecting that I would dare to lay a hand on Song Yang. The commotion in the garden drew the attention of my father, along with a crowd of curious and gossipy guests. Aunt Qing, seeing her son being bullied, immediately rushed to embrace Song Yang, and with the skill of a seasoned actress, squeezed out tears in an instant. Honey, look. Our Yan Yang got beaten up. Yan Yang is your only son. Dad's brows furrowed into several deep creases. Song Lan leaned close to me and sneered mockingly. Serves you right. Let's see how Dad punishes you later. You're so arrogant, but in the end, you'll end up worse off than me, won't you? I glanced at her. Her pristine white dress was stained with dirty mud from kneeling earlier, and her hair was disheveled. I said, you'd better take care of yourself first. Song Lan's expression stiffened. Then she glared at me with disdain. Waiting to see my fate, she didn't believe that my father would let me off easily this time after I had offended Song Yang. 6. Song Yang was still too young. He pushed aside Aunt Qing, who was crying and playing the victim, and pointed at me in front of so many people, saying, I'm going to beat her to death today. Dad, you can't just stand by and do nothing. Song Yang's arrogant and overbearing words were overheard by the guests, who began to point fingers at the family. Father's face instantly couldn't hold up, and Qing noticed father's emotional change and discreetly tugged at Song Yang's sleeve, urging her son to shut up quickly, but Song Yang had long been spoiled rotten. He was the little tyrant in this household. Not only did he threaten to beat me to death, but he even started spewing filthy and vulgar language, so unpleasant that the guests cleared their throats, and whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Is this the young master of the Song family? Such poor manners. If the Song family can raise a child like this, they must not have a single decent person among them. TSK, I won't have anything to do with the Song family from now on. These words fell clearly into Dad's ears, stinging his eardrums like needles. He suddenly roared at Song Yang. Shut up. Where did you learn such foul language at such a young age? I've spoiled you too much. Song Yang stiffened his neck and retorted, I'm not wrong. She's the one who's wrong. Dad's anger escalated further. That's your sister. Aunt Qing, seeing the situation, was about to feign grievance, but she didn't expect me to suddenly speak up weakly. Dad, don't be angry. It's all my fault. I've been living in the mountains for the past year, so it's normal for my brother not to recognize me. The tactic of showing weakness isn't just something Aunt Qing can use. Naturally, I can employ it too. Sure enough, upon hearing my words, Dad instantly felt a pang of heartache for me. No, it's not your fault, Ying. It's Dad who has let you down. The banquet ended on a sour note, and to make it up to me, Dad gave me 5 million as an investment fund for the mountain village. Song Yang had all his computers, phones, and tablets confiscated. He had to strictly adhere to the schedule, spending every day studying except for sleeping and eating. Aunt Qing felt sorry for her son and tried to influence her husband, but he suddenly turned hostile and pushed her away harshly. Now everyone in the circle is saying I have low character, all because of your precious son. If you dare mention it again, I'll lock him up in confinement. Believe it or not, Aunt Qing's face turned pale as she knelt on the ground. Since she married into the family, she had never been treated this way by her husband. Dad asked me to stay at home for a few more days, and coincidentally, several companies have extended olive branches. So I took the opportunity to handle the collaboration matters. Once, as I passed by Song Yang's room, a rude voice of a young man came from behind. Hey, stop. I turned a deaf ear, completely treating Song Yang as if he were air, and continued calling my aunts to let them know I was safe. The sound of hurried footsteps approached, and just as Song Yang was about to snatch the phone from my hand, I tightly gripped his wrist. Song Yang stared at me fiercely, opening his mouth that seemed to have spewed filth. My mom said, You're a motherless bastard. Get out of my house right now. I gazed calmly at Song Yang, who thought his words had stunned me, proudly lifting his chin. Yet the next moment, without any hesitation, I slapped Song Yang across the face. Song Yang was stunned, and the servant was stunned. Before Song Yang could even get angry, I slapped him across the face again. Song Yang's head was ringing from the slap, and then he heard my taunt. A bastard born to an outside woman dares to argue with me. If you don't believe me, go ask my sister Song Lan. Neither of us sisters are afraid of you. With that, I turned and walked away. I cleverly redirected Song Yang's anger toward me onto Song Lan, making him think I dared to slap him only because Song Lan had my back. Song Yang stood in place, and the first thing he did after coming to his senses was rush to Song Lan's room to settle the score with her. Not long after, Song Lan's startled screams echoed from upstairs, mixed with the sounds of the two of them wrestling. Song Lan shouted at the top of her lungs, What are you doing? But Song Yang paid no attention to Song Lan's furious roar. He jumped up, grabbed her long hair, and dragged her out without a second thought. Song Yang was the little tyrant at home, and even if Song Lan resisted, she didn't dare to use much force. As a result, she was dragged forcefully into the hallway and received a resounding slap. Song Yang shouted loudly, "How dare you not fear me?" 7. That day, the villa was in chaos. Song Yang was pushed down the stairs by Song Lan, and the servants quickly rushed the young master to the hospital. The examination results showed that Song Yang had only suffered a common sprained ankle, and Qing deliberately exaggerated Song Yang's injuries with tearful sobs, and Dad flew into a huge rage. From the moment Song Yang was taken to the hospital, Song Lan knelt at the corner of the hospital corridor, her back stubbornly rigid, her lips bitten until they were stained with blood. I walked up to her and glanced at her carelessly. "Is this the life you wanted?" Song Lan snorted with a laugh. "Don't think you've won, just wait, one day, I'll make you regret it." To say Song Lan is foolish, she truly hasn't let me down. She still thinks that her current predicament is entirely because of me. In my previous life, I stayed in the Song family, appearing on the surface as the glamorous eldest daughter, while in secret, Aunt Qing and her son caused me countless troubles, being forced to kneel in punishment, locked in a dark room, beaten, if it weren't for my cautious nature. These punishments would have fallen on me. After I recognized the situation, I studied diligently without the slightest relaxation while racking my brains to build connections. Only by climbing higher than the Song family would the Song family treat me with respect. During the day, I immersed myself wholeheartedly in the lab. At night, I navigated social gatherings, adapting to different situations and catering to others' preferences. In my previous life, I endured for 3 years before finally becoming a top-tier actress, while also holding the halo of a prestigious university graduate. The Song family no longer dared to neglect me, and even the arrogant Song Yang had to watch his words around me. In this life, I secured sponsorship from well-known enterprises through the development of a small mountain village and gained the title of a model worker through media hype. Regardless of which identity, both prove my capabilities and demonstrate that I am irreplaceable in this family. However, Song Lan clearly doesn't understand this. She still believes that as long as she takes my place and stays in the Song family, she can live a carefree and unrestrained life. Song Yang had only sprained his ankle, yet he made a big show of staying in the hospital for several days. During that time, Song Lan knelt in the corner of the hallway, drawing stares from onlookers like a monkey in a zoo. I knew Song Lan would cause trouble, but I didn't expect to receive a call from the hospital a few days later. I rushed to the hospital, where my second uncle lay pale and motionless on the bed, his eyes tightly shut and his forehead beaded with cold sweat. Uncles and aunts, covered in dust, gathered around the hospital bed. I quickly asked, "What happened?" It all started when Cousin Xuanzi received a call from an unfamiliar woman, who claimed to be my sister in the city, saying that I had been in an accident and was taken to the hospital. Upon hearing this, second uncle Grandpa immediately decided to head into the city without hesitation. Uncles and aunts, worried about the elderly man's mobility, hurriedly followed along. My great uncle had never left the mountains in his life, let alone seen an airplane. Deep down, he believed that such things were the work of evil spirits. For my sake, he overcame his resistance and took his first flight. After getting off the plane, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest and fainted before he could finish speaking. Hospital tests revealed that he had a heart condition. Fortunately, he was taken to the hospital in time, or the consequences could have been unimaginable. The aunts wiped their tears. "We called you, but you didn't answer. We were scared to death. I was out all day today discussing a collaboration, and my phone was turned off. The second granduncle's heart condition is urgent and requires immediate stent placement. I paid for the second granduncle's medical expenses up front, and without a word after leaving the hospital, I returned to the villa and kicked open Song Lan's door. Song Lan was trying on a new skirt, and without a word, I snatched it and covered her face with it. "Song Ying, are you trying to kill me, you crazy woman? Are you going to kill me for those lowly villagers?" Song Lan's twisted features pressed against the fabric, and I gritted my teeth as I asked, "Why did you harm my family?" Song Lan stiffened, then burst into hysterical laughter. "Song Ying, you're nothing but a wretch. Only you care about those poor relatives of yours, but I really didn't expect them to mean so much to you. I told you I'd make you regret it." I glared furiously at Song Lan's face, increasing the pressure in my hand, feeling the cloth covering her face tighten more and more, so much that she could hardly breathe. Song Lan grew a bit panicked. "No, you can't lay a hand on me. I'm about to marry Jianlin, the richest man." I loosened my grip. "You said you're marrying who?" Seizing the opportunity, Song Lan pushed me away and narrowed her eyes arrogantly. "The richest man, Jianlin." I gazed quietly at Song Lan, then suddenly sneered. "Fine, go ahead and marry him." 8. In her desperation to marry Jianlin, Song Lan had thrown all shame to the wind. Spreading the word that she would marry no one but Jiang Lin, Song Lan even went to great lengths to find out Jiang Lin's whereabouts, hoping to arrange a chance encounter, but before she could put her plan into action, Jiang Lin sent his secretary to discuss the marriage arrangements. Song Lan was overjoyed. Had she really managed to snag the richest man so effortlessly? The secretary brought a prenuptial agreement, which stated that even if Song Lan married into the family, she would have no claim to any of the assets. Song Lan's smile froze on her face, but in her desire to marry into wealth, she hesitated for a moment before signing. She still clung to the beautiful fantasy that once she married and spent every day with the young and handsome tycoon, she was sure feelings would develop. By then, wouldn't the prenuptial agreement just be a worthless piece of paper? Song Lan was suddenly full of pride at home, and when she saw me, she proudly boasted that she was about to become the wife of the richest man. I looked at her as if she were a fool. In her previous life, Song Lan only knew that I had married the richest man, so as soon as she found out that the current richest man was Jiang Lin, she couldn't wait to marry him. Little did she know that the person I actually married was Jiang Lin's son, Jiang Chen, in my previous life. In order to escape the Song family, I met Jiang Chen through connections. The moment we met, we both understood the hidden ambition in each other. Jiang Lin has been a philanderer all his life, never turning down any woman with a bit of charm. Jiang Chen is the child of Jiang Lin and his first wife. Besides Jiang Chen, there are several illegitimate children outside the family eyeing the Jiang family's wealth. I pretended not to know Jiang Chen and deliberately got close to Jiang Lin to find out his thoughts. In return, Jiang Chen paved the way for me in the entertainment industry. That interview that made me an overnight sensation seemed like a coincidence, but it was actually a carefully arranged inevitability. Jiang Chen and I worked together seamlessly, being ruthless to others and even more so to ourselves. After Jiang Lin passed away, the will stated that the estate was to be divided equally among all his children. Without even thinking, I directly altered the will. Jiang Chen delayed for 3 days before announcing Jiang Lin's death. By the time those illegitimate children arrived, it was already too late. Jiang Chen inherited all of the Jiang family's assets. Our interest should have ended there, but Jiang Chen still comes to see me from time to time. Once, we were photographed by paparazzi, and the pictures were posted online. Surprisingly, Jiang Chen publicly announced that we are in a romantic relationship. Jiang Chen said he needed a soulmate for a wife, and I happened to fit the bill. I don't understand, but I respect it. In my previous life, I had planned to ask Jiang Chen after the wedding, what exactly were his feelings for me? Was it just using me, or did he actually like me? Unfortunately, I never got the chance to ask before Song Lan stabbed me to death. Since it was a second marriage, Jiang Lin didn't take it seriously at all, and the date was just a random Sunday. A row of Maseratis was parked at the entrance of the Song family's villa. Song Lan was upstairs in the bedroom putting on makeup when the doorbell rang, and I went to open the door. A familiar face came into view, a pair of peach blossom eyes brimming with a smile. I froze. This was the first time I had seen Jiang Chen since my rebirth. Jiang Chen raised one eyebrow and leaned in slightly. So, you're my young stepmother. My face flushed. I'm not. Jiang Chen responded lightly, and after a moment, he spoke. It's a good thing you're not, otherwise, it would be a shame for someone so beautiful to be my stepmother. You should be my girlfriend instead. My heart skipped a beat, and I lightly bit my lip. Something's not right. In my previous life, when Jiang Chen and I first started working together, he was aloof and reserved. It was only later that he often teased me. How could it be? Before I could come up with an answer, Song Lan, dressed in her wedding gown, walked down the stairs with a shy and timid expression. Upon seeing the handsome Jiang Chen, her cheeks flushed, and she made a move to take his arm. You must be Jiang Lin, right? Thank you for coming to pick me up in person. I am not. Jiang Chen's tone was cool and detached as he avoided Song Lan's hand. I'm here to pick up the bride on behalf of my father. Song Lan was taken aback. Your father? Jiang Chen nodded. The Jiang Lin you're marrying is my father. He's 52 years old and the wealthiest man in Jiangqing. No, impossible. It was only then that Song Lan realized she had made a mistake. The person she was supposed to marry was clearly a young and accomplished tycoon. How could it possibly be an old man? She clenched the bouquet tightly, shaking her head desperately. I won't marry. I don't want to marry an old man, Dad. Please, help me beg for mercy. I don't want to get married. 9. Aunt Ching said sarcastically. It was you who insisted on marrying only the richest Mr. Jiang, and now it's you who regrets it. Our Song family can't afford to offend the Jiang family. Song Lan's eyes brimmed with tears as she looked at her father with hopeful anticipation. Dad, please, I beg you, let Song Ying marry him instead. I just don't want to marry an old man. But which is more important, a daughter or the Jiang family? Father quickly figured out the answer. Father had been smug these days about soon forming a connection with the Song family. How could he allow San Lan to say she wouldn't marry just because she didn't want to? Slap. Father raised his hand and gave San Lan a sharp slap, roaring angrily. What do you think the Jiang family is? You think you can just refuse to marry and have your sister marry in your place? Have you no shame? San Lan was stunned by the slap, her face streaked with tears, looking utterly disheveled. In the end, Dad had several servants tie San Lan up and stuff her into the car. San Lan struggled desperately, but it was useless. San Lan had been married for 3 months, and it was said that the Jiang family's nanny could hear her miserable cries for help and bitter curses every night. It was all her own choice. But she still blames me for everything. She didn't want to marry an old man who was halfway into the grave, especially since Jiang Lin has a heart condition and cannot engage in vigorous exercise. He exudes an old man's odor all over. He got married just to have a young and beautiful girl by his side to boost his image, but after the wedding, he lost interest and cast her aside. Hearing about San Lan's difficult life, I felt no emotional stir within me. The heart bypass surgery for my second granduncle was very successful, and the construction of the small mountain village was completed just before the new year. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, the small mountain village hot spring resort officially began operations. Thanks to prior arrangements with the media, visitors streamed in continuously on the opening day, making the place packed to capacity. Everything was moving in a positive direction, except for one person. Why did you ask me out again? I frowned, looking at Jiangchen sitting across from me. Jiangchen maintained a smile at the corner of his mouth. I heard this newly opened restaurant is quite good, so I brought you here to try it. I've heard this kind of reasoning from Jiangchen several times already. Whenever he discovers something new and interesting, he always shares it with me. I teased. How about I prepare a VIP guest room for you at the villa? That way, you can see me every day. Jiangchen naturally took my hand, his peach blossom eyes curving into a smile. Sure, I knew you had me in your heart. My hand felt like it had been shocked by electricity when he touched it, and I quickly pulled it back. What are you talking about, Mr. Jiang? Please be mindful of your position. If you spread rumors, I'll have my lawyer send you a warning letter. Jiangchen just smiled without speaking, quietly gazing at me like that. Jiangchen had also come with a serious matter this time. He had heard that Jiang Lin was recently considering making a will, so he intended to strike first. Jiangchen didn't even ask for my opinion before assuming I would get involved to help him. In fact, I did agree to assist him without hesitation. San Lan endured 3 months of disdain in the Jiang family. Jiang Lin treated her as if she were invisible, and the servants mocked her in various ways. San Lan made several calls to her father, but instead of sympathizing, he even harshly warned that if she couldn't make Jiang Lin happy, the Song family would have no use for a worthless daughter. Worthless, you're all worthless. San Lan angrily hung up the phone. She had to quickly come up with a good idea. Upon hearing about San Lan's predicament, I deliberately spread the word that there was an imported medicine with miraculous effects for heart disease, which was not yet available on the market and required a hefty sum to obtain. Holding on to the idea of trying a desperate remedy, San Lan bought it back and respectfully presented it to Jiang Lin. Jiang Lin took the medicine with a mix of doubt and hope, and after a few days, he indeed found that his constantly uncomfortable heart had improved, which even changed his attitude toward San Lan. 10. San Lan tasted the sweetness of success and finally felt a hint of being the center of attention, just as San Lan was immersed in the highlight of his life. He never expected that after the Lantern Festival, Jiang Lin would suddenly die of a heart attack in bed. San Lan trembled with fear as the bedroom door was pushed open. Jiangchen stared coldly at the flustered and guilty San Lan, raising an eyebrow. Did you kill my father? No, it wasn't me. I didn't kill anyone. San Lan's head shook like a rattle drum, her mind filled with the urgent need to flee this troublesome place, and she bolted out of the bedroom. She was truly terrified, to the point where she didn't even notice me standing behind Jiangchen. Jiangchen asked, still chasing after it. I shook my head. The reason San Lan had heard about that method was because Jiangchen and I had deliberately spread the word. If they investigated further, it might end up harming both of us. The outcome is the same anyway. Jiang Lin died before he could make a will, and Jiangchen, as the son of the first wife, directly inherited all the assets. Those illegitimate children rushed over upon hearing the news of Jiang Lin's death. When they learned that Jiang Lin's estate had no share for them, they made a scene and even threatened to take legal action. We are all our father's sons. Why is there no share for us in the estate? A hint of mockery flickered in the depths of Jiang Chen's dark eyes. Sons, do you have paternity test reports? Jiang Chen and I had already arranged everything. Jiang Lin was cremated immediately after his death. So those illegitimate children couldn't possibly conduct a paternity test with a pile of ashes. This move of cutting off the firewood under the cauldron was ruthless and decisive, leaving those illegitimate children with expressions of utter despair. Song Lan threw the medicine into the trash can. Even though she had destroyed the evidence, she was still immersed in the panic of being a murderer. She didn't dare to inquire about the news at the Jiang family. Nor did she dare to return to the Song family. When she wanted to stay at a hotel, she found that every hotel required showing an ID card. Song Lan was like a rat scurrying around everywhere, shivering from the cold as she curled up on a park bench during the day, and spending the night in a self-service bank at night. After more than a week of roughing it outdoors, Song Lan finally couldn't take it anymore. Her originally light-colored clothes were now unrecognizable. Her hair was a tangled mess like a bird's nest, and she looked like a ragged wild woman who had just emerged from the mountains. Song Lan decided to return to the Song family home to steal some money. She tiptoed up to the third floor, only to run headlong into Song Yang, who was holding a toy knife. Thief! Song Yang brandished the realistic-looking toy knife. Get out of my house, I'm calling the police. The word call the police triggered Song Lan, whose mental state was already precarious. Without a second thought, she pushed Song Yang, shouting, I'm not a thief, I didn't break the law, I didn't kill anyone either, I didn't do it, I didn't do any of it. Just as Song Lan fled in panic, I happened to return to the villa. Last time, Song Yang was lucky enough to only sprain his ankle after falling from upstairs, but this time, fate stripped him of that luck. By the time Song Yang was taken to the hospital, he was already on the brink of death. The doctors determined that a skull fracture had caused massive bleeding. After over an hour of emergency treatment, they managed to save his life, but he was left with cerebral palsy, requiring lifelong care for the rest of his days. Anqing seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. Seeing her own son in such a state was even more painful than killing her. 11. Anqing reported the incident to the police. The surveillance footage at home could prove that it was indeed Song Lan who pushed Song Yang down the stairs. The police quickly filed a case and launched an investigation, issuing a warrant for Song Lan's arrest, but Song Lan seemed to have vanished into thin air. The police searched for a full 3 months without finding any trace of her. 3 months later, news suddenly spread that I was about to marry Jiang Chen, the wealthiest man in the city. Just like in my previous life. Jiang Chen prepared a grand, century-defining wedding for me, announcing the news across major media outlets half a month in advance, making the entire city envious. While cleaning the toilet, Song Lan saw the news of my upcoming wedding during her meal break. A spark of jealousy instantly flared up, and she clenched her fists tightly in resentment. To this day, she still blames all her misfortunes on me. Song Lan decided to end it all with me. So she took a knife and sneaked into the Song family villa late at night, quietly opening the door to my bedroom. In the dark environment, she vaguely saw someone lying on the bed. Without a word, Song Lan raised the sharp knife. The sharp knife plunged into the human flesh with a thud. Song Lan let out a hysterical laugh. Song Ying, go to hell, haha. In the end, you still have to die by my hand, don't you? All of this is because of you. If it weren't for you, I would be the happiest person in the world. The bed was soon soaked in blood. Sensing that the person under the quilt had stopped moving, Song Lan hurriedly sheathed the knife and fled in panic. The next day, the servant discovered her father's body and screamed as she called the police. I agreed to Jiang Chen's proposal and then publicized it extensively just to make Song Lan come out on her own. Song Lan didn't know that during her absence from home, I suggested that the series of misfortunes in our family might be related to feng shui. So, on the advice of a feng shui master, Dad and I swapped rooms. If we hadn't switched bedrooms, the one who would have died would have been me. The next morning, Song Lan happily bought a breakfast and watched the TV in the mall, believing that the news of my death would be broadcast soon, yet there was nothing. She widened her eyes, straining them until they ached, only to receive a bombshell. The chairman of the Song group had unfortunately passed away last night, in mourning. The grand wedding between me and Jiang Chen will be postponed for a while. Song Lan's ears buzzed as if 10,000 flies were swarming, and despair crept across her face. Impossible. How could this be? I clearly killed that bitch Song Ying. Out of the corner of her eye, Song Lan saw 2 police officers walking toward her. Terrified, she broke out in a cold sweat and immediately took off running. The police pursued Song Lan for a full 5 years. And it wasn't until 5 years later that she was finally captured. It turned out that while Song Lan was hiding and evading capture, she encountered human traffickers. She was drugged and, upon waking up, found herself in a desolate, uninhabited mountain. After all the twists and turns, Song Lan's fate remained the same as in her previous life, having to face all the men in the village every day. When the police caught her, Song Lan was driven to madness, emaciated and weeping uncontrollably. repeating the same words over and over. I can't accept it, I can't accept it. When I heard the news, Jiangchen and I were on our honeymoon in Bali. The day before our grand wedding, we laid our cards on the table. It turns out Jiangchen was also reborn. The regrets from our grand wedding in the previous life have been completely made up to me in this one. Besides that, there was also a whole pile of sweet nothings, darling. To be honest, I fell in love with you at first sight. You thought I was cold and aloof because I was just pretending, darling. I really, really like you so much, darling. I irritably covered my ears, staring at the azure water and wondering whether to throw Jiangchen, that chatterbox, into the water. Forget it. I sweetly curled the corner of my mouth, deciding to wait another 100 years before finishing him off. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next. There is another similar story. Let's continue to see. A colleague comes to my house for a nap every day. He doesn't wash his sweaty feet and goes straight to bed. I politely declined several times, but she pretended not to understand. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and said, Sister Jiang, why don't you wash your feet before your nap? Her expression immediately turned sour, and from then on, she badmouthed me to everyone she met. Wang Qingqing is so shrewd. She won't even let me nap at her place for half an hour, as if she's hiding some great treasure at home. I just thought she was being gossipy, so I endured it. I never expected that a thief would break into my house that very night. As soon as I opened my eyes, I saw a dark figure brutally killing my cat, muttering angrily, "Where's the big treasure? How is there only a cat?" I desperately held back from making a sound, but was still discovered to be pretending to sleep, and ultimately met an untimely death. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my roommate shamelessly came to my house for a nap. Wang Qingqing, I'll be coming to your place for a nap later. It was nearly noon, and I hadn't finished the work at hand when my colleague Jiang Jie called. As soon as it struck 12, she called again to urge me, "What are you dawdling for? I didn't sleep until 3 last night, and now I'm so tired I could die. Hurry up." I really can't stand people like her who have no sense of boundaries. It's bad enough that she invited herself over, still not a bit self-aware, those smelly, sweaty feet, never washed, always stepping directly onto the quilt. I tactfully refused her several times, saying, "My boyfriend is here, so it's not convenient for you to come over for a nap during this time." I thought I could finally get rid of her, but unexpectedly, she timed it perfectly, thinking my boyfriend should have left by then, and called me again. I pretended not to see it. She then came up to me and said, "Working overtime at noon doesn't even come with extra pay. You should hurry home and get some rest. I've been busy all morning. My stomach is cramping from hunger, and I still have to rush home to turn on the air conditioner so she can take her afternoon nap." I can't even begin to describe how angry I am. So, when I smelled the stench from her sweaty feet, I finally couldn't hold back and said, "Jiang Jia, why don't you wash your feet before taking your afternoon nap?" I never expected Jiang Jie's expression to suddenly change, as she pointed at my nose and cursed, "Wang Qingqing, don't go looking for trouble. If you don't want me at your house, just say it straight. Don't beat around the bush with those nasty words, always being so sarcastic. It's not like I owe you millions." I was so furious at the time that I told her to get out of my house immediately. "You just wait," she said before leaving, dropping a harsh threat. Later at the company, she gossiped about me again. Wang Qingqing is such a sly one. She wouldn't even let me take a half-hour nap at her place, as if she's hiding some big treasure at home. I just thought she was being gossipy and let it slide, but I never expected that she would die in her own rented room that very night, too. The moment she realized she had been reborn, Jiang Jie was shamelessly clinging to me. A sharp pain shot through my arm. I snapped back to reality and immediately shook off her hand, speaking bluntly, "I don't like you coming to my house for a nap. Don't come again in the future." Jiang Jie froze, looking as if she had seen a ghost. I ignored her and went to the cafeteria first to deal with my hunger. After finishing my meal, just as I was about to head home, I suddenly received a message from Jiang Jie. "I can't sleep at the company at all. Maybe I've gotten used to sleeping at your place. I think I'll go to your house for my nap." Just 3 seconds later, she sent another message. "The key has been put back under the mat. I'm going to sleep first." I pursed my lips and immediately called her. The phone rang for over 10 seconds before it was answered. Jiang Jie yelled at me, "Wang Qingqing, when will you ever consider other people's feelings? I already told you I didn't get enough rest last night. Couldn't you have waited until I woke up to talk about whatever it is?" I was so angry I laughed, coldly questioning her. "Did I not consider your feelings? I would have kicked you out the very first day you followed me home. How do you have the nerve to come to my place for a nap every day? Did I ever invite you?" Can't you tell you're not welcome here? I've turned you down several times before, but you pretended not to understand and showed no self-awareness. Today, I had no choice but to be blunt with you. I never expected you to trespass into my home. Do you really want to tear things apart? Perhaps it's because I've been too tolerant at the company all along. Jiang Jia completely ignored my words, her tone even more aggressive than mine. It takes me 20 minutes to go home and back. Your place is so close to the office. What's the big deal if I take a nap there during lunch break? You're just selfish, always acting so stingy, nitpicking over every little thing. You live alone in such a big house, yet you don't even bother to tidy up the spare room and invite your colleagues over to rest. You always put yourself first. Listen to how self-righteous that sounds. My chest felt like it was blocked by a fire about to explode, and I had no intention of showing her any mercy. If you don't get out of my house right now, I'll call the police. But before I could finish speaking, the call was abruptly disconnected. When I tried calling back, she instantly rejected the call and blocked my number. I clenched my fist tighter. Suddenly, I remembered the key Jiang Jia had just mentioned. It was the spare key I had hidden under the doormat. I used to think that with advanced technology, surveillance everywhere, and people's moral standards being high, no one would ever steal anything, but having lived a second life, I find this thought of mine quite laughable. Not daring to think any further, I immediately ran back home. Yet, just 1 second before lifting the carpet, I suddenly noticed 2 cigarette butts nearby, pointing toward my front door. 3. The cigarette butt wasn't crushed underfoot. Judging by the crease on the filter, it was likely pinched up by hand, just like I do when I squat down, but almost no one in the building I rent smokes. The elderly man across the hall also quit smoking years ago after being diagnosed with a lung condition. A wave of panic surged within me. Quickly kick away both cigarette butts, repeatedly checking the door frame and corners for any special marks. Time passed bit by bit. As the time to go to work drew closer and closer, I had no choice but to first retrieve the key from under the carpet and carefully turn the door lock. Pushing open the door, the house was empty. Hearing the noise, the cat suddenly darted out, circling around me. My nose tingled with emotion, and my eyes grew hot and stinging. The cat's pupils narrowed, as if startled by me, but soon, it rubbed its furry head against me. Meow. Blue cats are gentle in nature, emotionally stable, and generally not fond of meowing. I have kept it for 3 years and have never heard it scream loudly, but in its previous life, it was brutally choked by someone, letting out a sharp, piercing cry. Only after it fell completely silent did the murderer forcefully throw it to the ground. With a heavy thud, the cat never woke up again, and I, timid and cowardly, could only curl up under the covers, trembling. After being discovered by the killer for pretending to sleep, I lost consciousness without even seeing his face clearly. My heart ached sharply, and tears welled up in my eyes. The cat knew nothing. It just tilted its head, looking at me, and gently licked the tears from my cheeks. I held it tightly in my arms, grateful for the chance to live another life. In this life, I will no longer be a fish on the chopping block, at the mercy of others. To keep both me and my cat alive, I must make foolproof preparations, for, without sleeping all afternoon, I frantically placed online orders for same-day delivery self-defense tools. When I rushed back to the office to work, I happened to hear Jiang Jia curling her lips and saying to someone, "Don't be fooled by Wang Qingqing's honest appearance, she's actually quite shrewd. I rested at her place for half an hour at noon, and she wanted me to pay. When I didn't, she started making all sorts of sarcastic remarks. Today, she even called and threatened to call the police on me. I have no idea what's gotten into her." After hearing this, several colleagues looked astonished. Someone wanted to ask for more details but noticed me standing nearby and quickly turned away. But Jiang Jia was not afraid at all. Seeing me approach, she said mockingly, "Qingqing, sleeping alone in a big bed with no one to disturb or bother, you must be really comfortable, right?" I smiled. "Yes, without the smell of your stinky feet, I fall asleep much faster." Afraid my colleague wouldn't understand, I sighed and explained, "Jiang Jia has sweaty hands and feet. As soon as she takes off her shoes, the smell is enough to knock you out." I felt too embarrassed to tell her not to come to my house, so I kept putting up with it. Today, I couldn't take it anymore and finally mustered the courage to refuse her. Jiang Jia was so angry that her whole face flushed red. "Wang Qingqing, are you crazy? I wash my feet every day. How could I possibly have smelly feet? If you don't want me to come to your house for a nap, just say it straight. Don't beat around the bush with all that nonsense." Several colleagues were desperately holding back their laughter, their shoulders shaking uncontrollably. I also found it amusing and walked up to her to warn her, "I know you not only have smelly feet, but your mouth is foul and gossipy too. If anything happens to me one day, you'll definitely be held responsible." When I said the second half of that sentence, I deliberately stared at Jiang Jia. A flicker of panic crossed her face. In my previous life, Although I didn't see the killer's face clearly, I distinctly remembered his coarse, eerie whisper, "Where's the big baby? Why is there only a cat?" The phrase big baby had always been Jiang Jie's catchphrase. Could there really be such a coincidence in the world? I don't believe it. But before I could say anything more, the supervisor came over. "What are you all gathered here for? Get back to work." No. 5. When things got busy. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I finished my work at hand and looked up to find Jiang Jie had already left. Unable to probe her further, I had to go to the courier station to pick up my package. While climbing the stairs back home, I noticed many cigarette butts had been thrown in the stairwell, but in comparison, the 2 cigarette butts at my doorstep are the shortest. Why would a normal person smoke 2 cigarettes at someone else's doorstep? I tried to calm myself down and searched online for what to do if you suspect you're being cased. I was the first to provide a few answers. I immediately posted a note at the door that read, "If you litter cigarette butts again, I will report you directly." Then, I had someone install the surveillance camera I bought online on the wall. After returning home, I also placed a doorstop alarm behind the door. The remaining self-defense tools were kept within easy reach. Time passed little by little. And night fell. I held the cat in my arms, lying on my side on the bed, not daring to close my eyes for a moment. By 3:24 a.m., my eyelids were so heavy that I could barely keep them open. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the stairwell outside the door. My heart tightened, and my throat felt so constricted it seemed to swell. I forced myself to endure the fear and went to check the surveillance footage. The screen shows loading, and just as the progress is about to reach 100%, the camera is suddenly blocked by something, leaving only a fragmented shadow visible. I dare not adjust the camera to alert the person outside the door, nor do I dare make a sound to call for help. My heart feels like it's about to leap out of my throat. My hands can't stop trembling. I drag the timeline of the surveillance footage to the left. A medium-height figure dressed in black appears in the frame. He is wearing a black beanie and a medical mask over his face. After kicking aside the doormat at my doorstep, he glances down, seemingly aware that there is a key hidden underneath, but I've already hidden the key. The man probably won't pick the lock. After hesitating for a few seconds, he then threw the thing he was holding at the camera. 6. The man in black ran away. After he left, I was even more afraid to close my eyes, my gaze fixed tightly on the window, fearing he might turn back and strike again. It wasn't until a faint light began to appear at the window that I mustered the strength to lift my numb body and stumbled to the police station to report the incident. After receiving a series of reassuring responses, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I went home, cleaned the excrement off the camera, and then headed back to work. Just as I reached the office door, I heard Jiang Jie sitting at my workstation chatting and laughing with someone. Wang Qingqing has run into some trouble. She definitely won't be able to come today. My colleague, who works closely with me, was puzzled. How do you know? Didn't you two just have an argument? Jiang Jie sighed. Wang Qingqing is particularly obsessed with money. She never takes sick leave even when she has a fever or a cold, and she's never late even during typhoons or heavy rain. Something major must have happened at home. Her pretentious act made me feel nauseous. I signaled to my colleague who noticed me to stay quiet. Only when I walked behind Jiang Jie did I suddenly speak up. "I'm sorry to disappoint you, but nothing has happened in my family." Jiang Jie jumped up from her seat in fright, her expression full of fear. I stared into her eyes, moving closer. "Are you curious about what I was doing on my leave?" Jiang Jie couldn't help but step back. When she realized she had shown fear, her expression instantly turned extremely unpleasant. I smiled and continued speaking. "Someone tampered with the surveillance camera outside my house last night. I went to report it this morning." The colleague beside me gasped, and everyone started asking me questions all at once. Jiang Jie suddenly laughed. "What kind of treasure do you have at home that a thief would be interested in? I've been coming to your place for naps for so long, and I've noticed you just love buying all sorts of random knockoffs. The only things you can actually show off are those bottles and jars in your computer." "Yeah, I'm really curious too." I nodded with a smile. "Look at the things I usually wear. They're all very ordinary. My phone is just a regular 2000 yuan Android device. I never show off what I have outside, and my social media is full of scenic photos. What could I possibly have that a thief would want?" Jiang Jie let out a cold laugh from her throat. "Who knows what kind of big treasure you're hiding at home? After all, you don't have to hand over your salary, you don't have kids to support, your mind is only focused on having fun, and all your money is spent on yourself." The colleagues looked at each other. The atmosphere instantly became awkward. I stared coldly at Jiang Jie, my knuckles turning white from clenching. In my previous life, I always believed in enduring everything, thinking that taking a step back would lead to a broader horizon, but now, I realize how foolish I was. Why endure it all? Taking a step back only invites others to take a mile. Just because I can endure it, I get bullied. I sneered. don't have such a strong sense of possessiveness over other people's money. How I spend it and where I spend it have nothing to do with you." Jiang Jie trembled with anger, pointing at my nose and saying, "You just wait." I slapped her hand away. 7. After the argument, Jiang Jie never came to my house again. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and life was as calm as if nothing had happened. But on the third day after work, I smelled smoke in the house, and my mind instantly went on high alert. I picked up the cat and quickly ran to a safe place to check the home surveillance footage. But after checking several times, I found no suspicious figures at the door. I had no choice but to call the police again. When the police arrived to investigate, they discovered a cigarette butt lying at the entrance to my bedroom. I could almost picture the scene of the murderer smoking that cigarette. He stood at the door of the room, or moved slowly around the house. His gaze swept over everything inch by inch, even teasing my cat with a mischievous scare. The fear of death quietly lingered in my heart. I felt a chill run down my spine, and my neck was tightly gripped by those hands again. "What's wrong with you?" someone asked. I looked up in a daze, gasping for breath, pointing at the cigarette butt on the ground. I shouted, "This must have been left by the thief." The cigarette butt was then placed in a transparent bag and taken away. Seeing them leave, I didn't dare linger in the house any longer. But if I don't stay at home, where else can I go? 8. At 10 o'clock in the evening, there was still no news. The only good news is, someone has come to protect me. But lying in bed, I couldn't fall asleep at all. Even the slightest noise would startle me awake. After struggling through until dawn, I felt as if I had been pulled out of water. After splashing my face with cold water, I rushed to the company and confronted Jiang Jie. "Was that person you who brought them here?" Jiang Jie looked bewildered. "What person? What are you talking about?" I gritted my teeth and pleaded weakly, "I'm sorry, I know I was wrong. Can you please tell him not to come to my house anymore? I'm begging you." Jiang Jie curled her lips into a smile and laughed heartily. "I really don't know what you're talking about. It's work hours now. Don't hold me up." I never expected Jiang Jie to be someone who wouldn't yield to either soft or hard tactics. I returned to my workstation and turned off the phone that was recording. After that, my mind remained in a state of high tension, on the verge of breaking down. I finally received 2 pieces of news. Good news, the thief has been found. Bad news, the thief is a repeat offender and has a mental illness. 9. I rushed to the police station and heard the person in charge tell me, "We extracted fingerprints from the cigarette butt and, after matching them in the system, identified a suspect. He Dusheng has a mental illness." I'm not insulting him, it's the truth. We previously sent him to a mental hospital, but the hospital found him too difficult to manage. They only admitted his sister and refused to take him in. As he spoke, the person in charge even opened his phone to show me photos. "Look, this is a photo of me sending him to the mental hospital. They found him troublesome and didn't want to take him in." My mind went blank for a moment, unsure how to handle this situation, and I awkwardly asked, "How long can someone like him be locked up?" The person in charge pondered for a moment and earnestly analyzed the situation for me. Since there was no monetary amount involved, the case couldn't be filed. And since the person is mentally ill, we can't detain them. Seeing my grim expression, the person in charge quietly changed the subject. "There are 4 people in his family, apart from his father, who is normal. The other 3 are all mentally ill. They defecate and urinate everywhere, and even steal underwear and shorts that others have hung outside to wear." These words felt like a bucket of ice water poured over my head from above. I closed my eyes in despair. At that moment, Hidashim's father rushed over. He kept repeating to me, I'm sorry, it's all my son's fault." The man appeared to be in his 60s or 70s, with a sallow face and a pained expression. Half of his body was wrapped in that oversized, hole-riddled school uniform, and his eyes looked exceptionally weary. He bent down, looking more like a victim than I did, and besides accepting it, I seemed to be able to do nothing. Until a phone ring sounded, I walked outside to answer it. Jiang Jie said, "I thought about it. Since you begged me like that, I'll go to your place for a nap at noon today." I gripped my phone tightly, a cold sneer in my heart. She then emphasized, "I get off work at 12, and it takes about 20 minutes to eat, so remember to open the door for me at 12:20. "Why do you need me to open the door? Don't you know there's a key under the rug?" I pursed my lips and persisted, "What exactly is your relationship with that lunatic?" Before she could finish her sentence, Jiang Jie had already hung up the phone. I had to run home to find her, but I never expected that this time she didn't even take off her shoes when she entered, walking straight into the bedroom. "You said my shoes would stink you to death if I took them off, so I'll just sleep with them on from now on." As she spoke, she was about to put on her shoes and get into bed. Fury surged within me, and I rushed over, grabbing her hair and yanking it back with all my might. She was dragged along by me like a trash bag, screaming loudly, "Wang Qingqing, you damn bitch. How dare you pull my hair? My parents never laid a hand on me. My husband never touched a single hair on my head. How dare you lay a finger on me? Why, I also want to ask why. Why should I, just because I have an honest personality, be taken advantage of by you who are so familiar with me? Why should I, after enduring again and again, still have my self-respect pulled out and trampled on the ground by you? Hatred spread wildly in the depths of the heart. The anger in Jiang Jie's eyes gradually gave way to terror, her sharp voice almost cracking. After all, the place I rented was an old house with almost no soundproofing, and soon someone was banging on the door. It's broad daylight. What's all the noise about? Can't you keep it down? I finally calmed down, my face darkening as I looked at the person on the ground. Get out. Watching Jiang Jie flee in a panic, I felt an immense sense of satisfaction, but I celebrated too soon. That night, at 3:34 a.m., the alarm in the bedroom suddenly jolted me awake. The supermoon mentioned in the news cast an exceptionally clear shadow outside the window. The old-fashioned security bars became the perfect foothold, with the dark figure outside clinging to them. 10. I held my breath. Turn on the switch of the wire wrapped around the iron window. Zzz. Moments later, the dark figure fell from outside the window, making a thud sound. At the same time, I dialed 110. He Daxing was taken to the hospital for emergency treatment. His father rushed over immediately, grabbing the doctor by the collar and shouting angrily, "Where is my son? If he's gone, I'll never let you off, even if I die." That face, which always looked troubled, twisted in agony. Fortunately, there were police officers nearby who promptly rescued the doctor. Hidashim's father also learned about his son's current condition from the police, pounding his chest with both fists. Dashim is my only son. I was counting on him to take care of me in my old age and see me off when I die. Who could be so vicious? A subtle glance was cast in my direction. Your son was injured while doing something bad. Who else are you trying to blame, mister? His face, etched with deep wrinkles, was full of stubbornness. My son is just playful. He never intended to harm anyone, but this person installed an electric fence on the window, clearly intending to cause harm. You should arrest her immediately. Just as his father was about to start making a scene, a nurse came out of the ward and said, "Is Hidashim's family here? Hidashim has woken up and keeps saying he's hungry." His father quickly scrambled up from the floor, putting on a flattering smile. All right. As long as my son is fine. Could you please give him something to eat first? I'll go buy him some big meat buns right away. He turned and ran out, bumping into several people along the way. After his figure disappeared down the corridor, I turned into the ward. 11. As I walked in, Hidashim's gaze fell upon me. The way he looked at me was unfamiliar, clear, as if he didn't know me at all. It wasn't until I reached his bedside that he asked curiously, "Who are you?" Instead of answering, I asked him, "Why did you go to that person's house last night?" Hidashim was initially a bit impatient, but upon hearing this, his eyes suddenly lit up with excitement, and his face flushed red. "Of course, it's to fight the boss. I never expected this dungeon to be so difficult. The boss actually respawned in someone else's house. I failed both attempts to clear it. Once I take some medicine to heal my injuries this time, I'm definitely going to get a set of high-level gear and weapons and try again." I was taken aback. Suddenly, I felt the absurdity of this world. Even my death in my previous life and my vigilance in this one seemed laughable, but I have another guess in my heart that urgently needs verification. Who told you about this game? Hidashim's expression suddenly turned fierce. As if with one more word from me, he would pounce and attack. Seeing him like this, I could only put on my mask and leave for the time being. I didn't stop to make the call until I had walked all the way outside the hospital. Hidashim told me everything. Jiang Jie was taken aback on the other end of the line. "What?" Before I could explain, she burst into laughter. "Wang Qingqing, you actually believe what a mentally ill person says? It seems you know Hidashim." I seized on the wording and questioned, "Otherwise, how would you know he has a mental illness?" Jiang Jie stopped smiling and said with feigned ease, "Yes, I know him. So what? Everyone in my neighborhood knows him." After getting this answer, I returned to the ward once more. He waited until his father had walked away before going in, continuing the previous topic. "I'm a player just like you." Hidashim showed a wary expression, his hand slowly reaching toward the cup on the bedside table. I snatched the cup away before he could, quickly explaining, "I'm a newbie. I don't even know how to enter the instance. If you can tell me who assigns the tasks, we can team up to tackle the levels together in the future. One more person means one more strength." The indifference on Hidashim's face slowly faded, and his gaze toward me turned puzzled. "So this dungeon can be teamed up for. No wonder I couldn't solo it." After muttering to himself for a while, he earnestly told me, "This is a hidden dungeon. I picked it up at the entrance of the internet cafe. The NPC is female. I often see her in Shaowang village. You can try your luck there. If you successfully pick up the dungeon, be sure to come find me to team up." I smiled and nodded, but my gaze gradually turned cold. If I remember correctly, Jiang Jie's husband's surname is Wang, and she currently lives in Shaowang village. Since she insists on pretending not to understand, I hope she can keep up the act. 12. I opened the map and searched for internet cafes located in Shaoyang Village. There are 2 in total. I first went to the one with the simplest decoration. The receptionist was a young man. Upon learning that I wanted to check the surveillance footage at the entrance, he quickly called the boss to ask for instructions. The boss found it troublesome and flatly refused me. If it were in my previous life, I would have already backed down in the face of difficulty, but now, I told him firmly and resolutely, if you don't show it to me now, then it will be the police coming to take a look later. Upon hearing this, the boss simply agreed. The young man immediately cooperated and pulled up the surveillance footage. In the surveillance records from the past 7 days, Dystopian came here to use the internet almost every late night. Going further back, Jiang Jie's figure appeared in the surveillance footage at the entrance. She chatted with Dystopian for a while at the edge of the surveillance frame. That day was exactly the day I refused Jiang Jie's request to come to my home for a midday rest. I asked the guy to send me this surveillance footage, and I'll forward it to Jiang Jie. The video had just been sent successfully when the phone rang. This time, Jiang Jie finally couldn't stay calm anymore. Wang Qingqing, what do you mean by this? Do you believe I'll sue you for violating my privacy? I laughed. If you know the law so well, why are you inciting a mentally ill person to commit a crime? I didn't. Don't go looking for trouble, Jiang Jie loudly denied. What can a blurry video prove? If you have nothing better to do, hurry up and come to work, otherwise, I'll tell the boss that you took leave just to do such shady things and have him fire you. Just try reporting it. Too lazy to continue arguing with her, I just took a taxi to the hospital. After meeting Dystopian, I opened a selfie from Jiang Jie's social media for him to identify. Is the NPC her? The photo had beauty filters applied. Dystopian took one look and shook his head. I had no choice but to dig up a group photo from the work chat. Dystopian immediately nodded, pointing at Jiang Jie's face and shouting, "It's her, it's her." She said the dungeon reward was a glowing computer, and lots of snacks. Lots and lots of money. These are all mine. You're not allowed to touch them. Dystopian's face suddenly hardened, his gaze turning fierce as he spoke. I wasn't afraid, just felt a sense of irony. Just because I asked Jiang Jie to wash her feet before the lunch break, she went around slandering me. Just because I spend the money I earn on myself, she's unhappy. I can only keep my unhappiness to myself. When she's unhappy, she finds someone to harm me. I laughed in anger, took 2 steps back to create some distance, and then said to Dystopian, this person is not an NPC at all. You've been deceived by her. She's treating you like a fool, making you make mistakes and get caught, causing your father to lose face. Those rewards she mentioned were all bought with other people's money. Didn't your father teach you that you shouldn't take things that belong to others? Dystopian stared blankly. He seemed to be thinking, yet also seemed unable to understand my words. I told him, I have a way to prove that she is a fraud. 13. As I walked out of the hospital room, I suddenly met the gaze of his father. He was holding a lunchbox in both hands, and I couldn't tell how long he had been sitting outside. He gave me a nod, his expression blank. Watching him go in to feed Dystopian, I snapped back to reality with a sense of unease. But once the arrow is shot, there's no turning back. You never know until you try. 14. That afternoon, his father arranged for Dystopian to be discharged from the hospital. Dystopian intercepted Jiang Jie on her way home. Jiang Jie quickly pulled him into a corner, completely unaware of the complex looks directed at her. What's wrong with you? Can't even get through such a simple dungeon. Dystopian stared at her and said, you lied to me. Jiang Jie whispered sharply, who said that? Why would I lie to you? As long as you clear the dungeon, you can take everything inside directly. You're just not capable, and now you're blaming me for lying. Those are someone else's things. You can't take them. Dystopian repeated what I had said. Jiang Jie chuckled. You're such a fool. If you can't take it, you can have someone else give it to you. Dystopian immediately got excited. Really? Then how should I tell her? Jiang Jie smiled and suddenly lowered her voice. Defeat the dungeon boss, and she'll naturally give it to you. Dystopian responded with a series of ahas and waited until Jiang Jie had walked far away before taking the voice recorder out of his pocket. After listening to the recording, I dialed the police hotline. Hello, I am Wang Qingqing, the one who reported a burglary at my home on December 14th. I want to formally report my colleague Jiang Jie for maliciously inciting the mentally ill patient Dystopian to commit a crime. She deceived Dystopian into treating the home invasion as a game mission, treating the items in my home as mission rewards, and demanded that Dystopian use violent means against me. Jiang Jie has incited Dystopian to target me on multiple occasions, posing threats to my personal safety on several instances. Please, you must. 15. That day, Jiang Jie was taken away during work hours. Leaving everyone staring in stunned silence, the leader came running over in a panic to negotiate. but was sharply cut off. When Jeong Jia stood before me, her face instantly turned pale. She lunged at me frantically, hurling insults at me. You bitch, you bastard, your mother, why don't you just die? I didn't do anything, why are you arresting me? I still have to go to work, I want to go home. But no matter how she tried to argue or struggle, it was no match for the overwhelming evidence presented one by one. In the end, Jeong Jia seemed to have grown tired, just kept repeating over and over. I really didn't. I didn't do anything. What's fake can't become real. What's real can't become fake. The recording I had Hidashiang make is enough to prove that she is guilty of incitement, and she is the principal offender. Jeong Jia shook her head desperately upon hearing this. She pleaded with me in a trembling voice, Ching, you clearly have nothing wrong. Why won't you let me go? I've learned my lesson, and I'll never dare to speak carelessly again. I was just jealous that you have no burdens in life, ordering takeout whenever you want, turning on the air conditioning when it's hot, living without having to please others or scrimp and save. I never meant to harm you. I was just momentarily confused and couldn't control my words. My son is only 2 years old. If I'm not by his side, my mother-in-law will definitely force my husband to divorce me, and then my son will have no mother. Please, I beg you. She broke down in tears. Continuously repenting, even kneeling down to kowtow to me, I took a deep breath with an expressionless face, a faint bitterness welling up in my heart. My life is not as good as she described. Just 1 year out of college, I had just survived the grueling and exhausting internship period, just gotten over the pain of a lover's betrayal, and just paid off an overdue loan. In her eyes, I was living a carefree and happy life on my own, but in places she couldn't see, I wasn't all that happy. I was the emotional dumping ground for my parents, a piece of property in the family, a soft persimmon. I spend money on a cup of coffee, a piece of clothing, and those flashy little things because I want to live with mental well-being, yet her momentary lapse of judgment became my utter downfall. 16. During my prolonged silence, Jeong Jia finally realized I would not forgive her, like someone on the verge of drowning. She stared at me with a twisted expression, wildly flailing her arms and grasping at the air. Wang Ching, you really deserve to die. Why don't you just die? The sound of the forceful scream was piercing to the eardrums. Jeong Jia was taken away to calm down. During the subsequent interrogation, she still tried to make excuses, but the evidence I provided was sufficient, and she finally had to confess her motives and the process of her crime, just as she pleaded with me for mercy. She said she simply felt that I was living too comfortably alone, and it made her feel unbalanced, so she deliberately caused trouble for me. As for instigating Hidashiang to commit the crime, it was purely because I refused to let her come to my house for a nap, and she wanted to take revenge. Finally, not only does she have to compensate me for my emotional distress, but she also has to spend a few years working on a sewing machine. When the verdict was announced, Jeong Jia fainted from anger. But fainting was of no use. Everyone must pay for their mistakes. Not long after Jeong Jia was imprisoned, Hidashiang was also subjected to compulsory medical treatment due to his high level of danger, and I used that compensation for emotional distress to rent a new apartment. Then, with the cat, I moved into the new house and restarted our new life. After hearing the 2 stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.